First of all, just a few slides to talk about just outline who the AHDC is. I'll just work the technology first. Okay, good. The Australian Health Design Council is an organisation, a members-based organisation with a special interest in Australian health facility design, particularly in the management and planning of those facilities. We're incorporated in the state of Victoria last year with our annual general meeting coming up later this year. I'll skip through these pretty quickly because they will be in the handout. The AHDC has alliances with a number of organisations, in particular the ACHSN, AHHA and the Australian Centre for Health Innovation. Presently we're implementing a new website with members-only section which can be found in the slides. We're running a number of half-day and one-day seminars across most jurisdictions and states. At the moment we're developing a project data website in conjunction with our alliance partners. One of our key focuses has been organising health design-related study tours. I'm talking today about the European study tour of last year, and in about a month's time there's a group of 8 of us heading off over to the Netherlands just to specifically look at a number of hospitals there. The AHDC is supporting people with other educational activities such as preparation for the EDAC exam, and we're giving some thought to developing an awards program around health design. Who are the people in the committee? I think you'll know most of the people. Good representation in Victoria there with Leslie Away, Shane O'Leary and Matt Rumbelow, Jane and myself from New South Wales, with Roger from New South Wales as well, and Jason also. A little bit about membership. You can join online and the membership benefits of being part of an organisation. Access to tours such as the one coming up in September, and regular information and educational sessions. Anyway, into the important thing. The study tour of last year took into account 14 participants. We headed overseas and to the UK, the Netherlands and to Norway. So 3 countries, 12 days, 14 facilities. And I think some of us thought at the start, oh, this might be a holiday as well as educational. It was far from being a holiday. I think everyone needed a holiday after the program. It was absolutely hell almost. This is a photo of the group taken outside Hell in Norway. We had a bus driver dropping us back to the airport. He thought he should take us to Hell. And here you can see all the suspects that were that went. People may know there's Susan Medlin, who was just come off the Royal Children's Hospital here in Victoria, and Kelvin Steele over there, and Keith Joe also from the Centre for Health Innovation. Just to give you an idea where we went, these are the facilities that we visited. Pembury out at Tunbridge Wells, Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, QE2 Hospital in Birmingham, Royal Manchester Infirmary, particularly we went to the Children's Hospital there, Salford Royal, the Maggie Centre at Hammersmith, the London Clinic and St Bart's. We then took off over to Norway and visited St Olavs at Trondheim, Riks Hospital and then Akershus in Oslo. That led on then to Erasmus in Amsterdam, Masted, Deventer and Orbis at Sittard. So in 14 days, of which 2 of those days were Saturday and Sunday, 12 days of actually hospital tours over that period of time. We gave some structure to how we evaluated the facilities that we saw, so to put some structure around at the end of the day. We looked at things like architecture and design, looking at wayfinding, natural light and ventilation, future-proofing and expansion strategies. From a patient-focused care point of view, we looked at innovative strategies to deliver care. From the staff work environment, the amenity and the work environment. There's some very interesting differences between between a number of the countries. The adoption and use of technology was very interesting. I have a couple of videos when we get into the presentation where you can see how technology has been integrated, and the environment and how it contributed to the overall environment, urban setting. This here just is the results table, just to give you an idea of how facilities were ranked by each of the categories. Rank over here, number one up the top there, and going down in order with architecture and design, patient focus, staff work environment, technology and environment over here. And then last of all, we come up with the wow factor. So taking into account all the other components, which ones really wowed us. In terms of the colour coding here, the yellow is the Netherlands hospitals, the blue is the Norwegian hospitals, and then this browny pinky colour is the UK hospitals. Clearly one outstander right across the top was Orbis at Sittard. Very unimposing building from the outside. I'll show you a picture of what it looks like, but inside it was absolutely amazing, but not over the top. So the Dutch hospitals, in particular Orbis, were high ranking. The Norwegian hospitals were high ranking, and it's interesting if we've all heard about St Olave's for many years now about this single patient design, single room design, and a lot of other things. It was good, but there are some hospitals that pipped it at the post. These next few slides just talk about and show some pictures of the environment of the facilities that order of rank. Further on into the slides, I get into the detail, so don't be alarmed if you think I'm skipping through this quickly. Here we are. This is the external environment of Orbis Hospital, Orbis at Sittard, and this is the internal environment here. This is in the main public corridor. Patient-focused care. Once again, Orbis at Sittard was the outstanding environment, and I think a lot of this had to do with the cultural environment of the Netherlands. People are encouraged that when they come into hospital, they know on the day that they're coming in, if not before, that they are going home on X amount of days. And unless you're very sick, there is this move to get people out of bed and moving very quickly. Deventer, also in the Netherlands, and Great Ormond Street scored high as well. And particularly around Great Ormond Street, the focus is on the family and the patient more so than the others. That just came through in everything that we saw. This here is a panorama picture of the main entry at Deventer, taken with an application called PhotoSynth. I'm not quite sure it gives you the right perspective though. The staff work environment, again, Orbis at Sittard came out on top. Here's Kelvin Steele actually sitting in. This is a staff quiet zone. You look at the chair that he's sitting in, has these winged sides to it up here, so that a staff member can sit in there and have a conversation, or they can sit there and have the noise from associated within the area not come up against them so much. Obviously in the Netherlands, lots of bikes were a big thing, so bike parking everywhere. And then this is some artwork inside a staff area in St Olave's. Okay. Technology, its adoption and use. Orbis Sittard was the outstanding environment, closely followed by Arcasis and St Olave's. And some of the technologies that we were seeing, I mean, this is St Olave's, representing the patient entertainment system, fully integrated, more than just a television. Down here, we're seeing the same thing at Arcasis. Here, a pneumatic tube system. Here, this was taken at Arcasis in Oslo. All staff wear uniforms. You can see this woman here, it's just wears civvies and a white coat. Staff, all these uniforms have a RFID tag associated with them. The facility knows where they are at any one time. Staff exchange them on a user pay basis. They're cleaned and maintained on site and managed through technology. You can see here. It's like a big laundromat or a big dry cleaners. I must say, the only place we saw this sort of technology, which was in Norway. In the urban environment and integrating to the urban environment and contributing to it, Orbis was the standout. And this is actually the main entrance at Orbis at Sittard. It's pretty, it's just there. It's just a building. It doesn't look anything, grand and civic in nature. Something till you get inside that you get wowed. Here's Deventer here, situated in a rural area, if you could call it a rural area in Netherlands. It's not a big country. And it's particularly taking use of geothermal heating and cooling technology in the adjacent fields. And this is the outdoor spaces associated with AHDC and how that's been integrated into the internal environment. The wow factor, once again, this is Orbis, the staff areas. This is a chapel at AHDC and internal spaces within St Olave's. One of the things that we noticed was that the cultural differences tended to have a big impact on facility design. And this was particularly evident at Orbis. Right. Here, this is a patient room at Orbis, and the room has sliding glass walls. They have a nested bathroom, and this window here looks out onto the internal atrium of the facility. The total patient environment is controlled by the patient, from air conditioning to integral Venetian blinds inside these glass sliding doors. So once the patient's inside, they can control the entire environment. But as I mentioned earlier, the focus is on getting people out of bed and getting out of the hospital from the moment they're admitted. To take that one step further, there are these common areas. This is looking down the hallway at Orbis, and this room is literally in that position. So the patients are encouraged to come out into the patient lounge, or meals are taken where possible outside here in this common area. And what we noticed in this facility, that clean utilities were non-existent. That function was incorporated into this common area with appropriately securing controlled substances and those sorts of things and harmful things. And down here, this was St Olave's. So what we noticed here is that the patient room was really their sanctity. And it was interesting to notice how the staff behaved in treating patients. If the door was closed, and these rooms did not have an observation panel in the door, if the door was closed, the staff would not go in that room before they knocked, and they waited to hear the patient say, "Come in." And if the patient didn't come in, they would wait a little while before they just would not break into the room. And this is a picture of Rick's Hospital, quite old. Just showing, they've had to retrofit a lot of services into the building, and they've ended up with this very this low ceiling, which doesn't provide the best look. Innovative workplaces and work staff practices were one of the things that we saw. And it was interesting in so much that some environments planned for work environments that were innovative, others didn't. And the places that did plan for it from the outset were the hospitals in the Netherlands. They were Orbis and Sittard, Orbis at Sittard and Deventer. The contribution to the environment. In the Netherlands, Erasmus and Maastad, particularly in the Netherlands. In Norway, AHDC and Rick's Hospital, And in the UK, the group felt that QE2 in Birmingham and Gosh contributed significantly to the environment. Technological innovations. AGVs were evident, or automated guided vehicles were evident in Norway and the Netherlands. Robotics in pathology we saw at Akershus in Norway, and I have a video showing both of those items in a moment. Patient information systems, integration into hospital-wide systems were evident at Trondheim, at St Olaf's and at Marsted in the Netherlands. And the underground bunkers at the London Clinic provide a very innovative solution. I'll have a picture of that in a moment as well. We also saw barn theatres at the Salford Royal in London, just out of London, north of New Manchester. I talk more about that in another slide. The conclusion from the group was that they weren't a big success, but I'll talk in detail in a moment about that. Other facilities with a wow factor were the London Clinic, the Maggie's Centre at Hammersmith, particularly about the service they provide to oncology patients. The Oslo Opera House, although not a health facility, was an outstanding building on its own. And a few honourable mentions go to Marsted, Tunbridge Wells at Pembury, Gosh, particularly how they've incorporated heritage components into a new building. In actual fact, this is the chapel from Gosh, and they had to pick it up. I think it was built in the late 1700s, early 1800s. It had to be picked up and rotated through about 210 degrees in order to be accommodated in the new facility. And you wouldn't have known. Panorama picture of the Maggie's Centre in Hammersmith, London. This is the London Clinic, a private oncology clinic built in the centre of London, 3 or 4 levels below ground, on a very small, tight, narrow block. With the use of this light well here, getting light down into this waiting area, it really gave a very nice feel to the environment. Okay, the key learnings. The health service planning and facility briefing in some facilities appeared to be out of step with the requirements of the built environment. This was particularly seen in the Netherlands, and I think it's largely, or I believe it's largely attributable to the fact that their funding models or how they're funding health changed just in the middle of their planning process. And 2 facilities in particular, Orbis and Deventer, both found within 12 months of opening the new facilities that they had far too many beds, and Orbis in particular had reconfigured 100 beds from an overnight bed base to an ambulatory care environment. And Deventer itself had closed 50 beds just the 2 days before we were there. But in the UK, looking at the PFI projects, a number of projects experienced significant problems with the scope, and this came to light during the VAFO negotiations, which led us to believe there may have been problems with the public sector comparator in the early stages. At the QE2 hospital in Birmingham, they were 2,000 square metres, the budget shortfall roughly equated to 2,000 square metres, so they took the decision to pull all office accommodation out of the facility during the negotiation phase. Salford Royal also experienced problems, as to the Royal Manchester Children's Hospital and Pembury. Once again, they adopted an open plan office environment purely based on the fact that they just did not have the budget to be able to include that in the space, although they had briefed it. In the UK particularly, the impact and the extent of change management was required was significantly underestimated, and particularly around moving to new models of care and high percentage of single rooms. The last point there, open plan office environments were a common feature in a number of facilities, but in the UK they generally weren't planned for. The trend in Europe was towards open plan, particularly at Deventer, Orbis and Mustad. Tunbridge Wells, I just said that it resolved as a budget shortfall, and at QE2 Hospital, those that planned for it from the start had worked with their staff around this new strategy. They had very nice amenity. It was not just an open room with rows of desks and workstations, but quite a lot of thought was put into it. The open plan areas appeared to be flexible and adaptable, and they were actually liked by staff. And I think one of the challenges we've probably got here in Australia is that people tend to be quite wedded to this cellular office environment. It's hard to break down at times. As I mentioned, in comparison, the trend in the UK is limited to budget pressures and pulling space out. This slide here is just looking at the single versus multi-bed room rates. It gives you an idea here of who the hospital is, the date that they are open, and the ratio of single beds. Excuse me. Pembury at Tunbridge Wells, between 2004 to 2006, the old hospitals at Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells had an outbreak of Clostridium difficile and had about 90 patients die over that 2-year period, and then another 240 or so had their deaths attributed to that outbreak. That led to the development of the 100% single strategy here at Pembury. At Salford Royal, opened in 2011, 50% single, 50% multi-bed rooms. Queen Elizabeth Birmingham, 40 single, 60% multi-bed rooms. St Olave's, 100%. The first stage opened in 2006 and then progressively opened more up until 2010. Akershus in Norway opened with 43% singles. Deventer, a low rate of singles, but they had a mix of 2 and 3 bed rooms to complement that. Orbis at Sidon is 100%, and Mustard in the Netherlands is also at 50% single and 50% multi-bed. Interestingly, there's some interesting impacts from high proportion of single rooms, particularly for Pembury. They found that there was an increase in patient falls rates, and the elderly people preferred multi-bed rooms so that they could communicate with other people, whereas the younger people preferred single bedrooms. To overcome this somewhat isolation and the increased risk of falls, Pembury developed an intentional hourly rounding process, as did Salford Royal. In actual fact, Salford Royal orientated patients to the ward environment on admission, and that orientation involved talking to them about a nurse will be in your room every hour to provide care, to see how you are, to do something. And the nurses actually practice that every day, even overnight. And what that eliminated was patients isolated in single rooms using their buzzer just to have the nurse come in and move their water glass, which they don't desperately need moved, but if they know the nurse is coming back in 40 minutes' time, then they can wait for that to happen. So they found that the falls rate fell, and also the isolation of the patients didn't feel so isolated. Pembury told us that the rate of HAIs was very low, and they attributed this to 100% single rooms. And an interesting comment from Pembury was that they underestimated the impact on nursing staff, but also support staff, around 100% single rooms, both in horizontal travel distances and actually cleaning 30 en suites instead of half that number as in previous facilities. This is the Pembury Tunbridge Wells typical ward layout. It's 30 beds. It's been developed in 10-bed pods. There's one pod here, a second pod here, and a third pod here. Centralised services here. These beds access services across the corridor here. This 10-bed pod accesses services from here. It's very compact ward design. Interestingly, the nursing staff, after having lived and worked in the environment for some time now, find that a 10-bed pod is not delivering them the operational efficiency that they need. their feeling was that 8-bed pods or modules of 8 worked much better than a module of 10. They were having to run 2.5 nurses in each pod, whereas if it was 8 beds, they'd get away with 2. This is the ward layout of QE2 Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Looks like 3 donuts. It's an incredibly large facility. Each ward is in half of the donut, circulating corridor through the middle there, and then another ward up the end here. Notice the curved contour of the buildings. It actually plays out when you're standing in a corridor down here and you try to look up the corridor. It's very hard because you're actually trying to look around a corner, although it's not a corner. And this picture probably doesn't represent it well, but you can just start to see a slight bend to the corridor. Single room design was a big thing, particularly at places like Pembury. Don't read the text, but essentially here's the ensuite out here. You're providing the view to the outside was held in high regard. The patient's head of the bed is here. The patient can get out of bed and easily get into the ensuite. And the head of the patient particularly can be seen from outside. Staff walk past, they can see the patient very easily. In terms of ward design, at St Olave's, very long, single-loaded corridors, incredibly long. And this was a staff member. These scooters were everywhere, and staff were just travelling up and down corridors on scooters. This slide just gives you an overview of the IPU layouts and the type and the number of beds. As I said, Tunbridge Wells were in pods of 10 and they found that difficult from an operational point of view. QE2 Hospital had a single loaded corridor. Salford Royal had double loaded corridors with ward size of 24 beds. St Olave's had 16-bed wards clustered in 8-bed pods. Akasus, 28-bed wards in 7-bed clusters. Deventer ranged between 36 and 40 with a single corridor, and they had a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bedrooms. The 3 bedrooms were interesting in so much that it looked very similar to our 4-bedroom design, but the space in which the 4th bed would be is taken up by the ensuite. And part of their discussion was that these rooms could be turned into 2 singles at a later date if that was what was required. Albus nested ensuites, 100% singles and 32-bed wards, and Marsted, 32 again with 50-50, and their multi-bed wards were 4-bedders. The Barn Theatre at Salford Royal, this was an interesting concept. Unfortunately, the day that we were there were cases going on, so we couldn't take any pictures. But essentially, it's 2 operating rooms that were retrofitted into a constrained space. And the model of care was driven by an anaesthetist, and on the premise that if they were short of specialist anaesthetists or consultant anaesthetists who were required to oversee registrars at work, by taking down the walls in between 2 operating theatres, the anaesthetist could move freely between the 2 rooms. They only do orthopaedic cases in this area. Operational policies within the room need to be strict, and they even got down to painted lines on the floor within each of the rooms as to where you could circulate through and where you couldn't step over if you weren't a part of the surgical team, just to reinforce the model. As I said, it's predominantly used by orthopaedic surgery, and the surgeons don't like it. And the particular day that we were there, for those clinical people, you can imagine being in 2 orthopaedic theatres, no walls in between, or virtually no walls in between, with drills going in both rooms at once, with patients who may be conscious but not awake or in different states of consciousness. I'm not quite sure that it is what we want to replicate here in Australia. And as I say, the surgeons don't like it. For people having regional anaesthesia, it was discomforting at times. The technological innovations we saw throughout Europe largely are automated pharmacy solutions, automated guided vehicles, robotic pathology solutions, integrated ICT solutions, and this, I must say, was the hospitals that really performed well and were ranked high, had really embraced technology and integrated across all of their corporate and clinical systems. A high degree of technological uptake in European facilities. The technology uptake was generally limited in the UK. At QE2 Hospital in Birmingham, they had a pharmacy robot, but they actually had an in-house ICT team that developed all their interfaces and managed and developed their corporate systems. Gosh had a pharmacy robot, which is interesting in having that inside a children's hospital, as a lot of medications are dose or weight related. And as I said, the QE2, the ICT was integrated and developed in-house. Technological uptake resulted in some significant savings and return on investment, particularly at AHDC in Oslo. They determined through their business case that installing 22 AGV carts and adopting that system, they would save 15 FTEs recurrently, and they had a payback of about 3 years. And they're coming up to 5 or 6 years using that technology. Their automated pharmacy solutions were adopted in four facilities, but not in any of them did we see point-of-use dispensing cabinets such as a Pyxis type system. They were all robotic solutions that dispensed to patient level in the pharmacy level. It was then transported to the clinical areas. And the places that really embraced automation, the robot would dispense the medication at a patient level, usually on a dose basis, and would load it into the pneumatic tube system, so it was transported to the ward level without any human intervention. The technology adoption in terms of AGVs in the UK, QE2 Hospital, they have enabled their facility to use them in the future if they choose that. Norway and in St Olave's and Akershus, the technology is in use. Orbis, it was used, but Masted and Deventer in the Netherlands have enabled their facility, but they are not using it, and particularly Deventer, their business case just did not stack up. They could not get a reasonable return on their investment. The robotic pharmacy, we saw that at Gosh and QE2 Hospital, Akershus and St Olave's, and at Orbis. And one of the keys, the robot's one thing, but the integrated ICT, particularly the clinical records, is one of the most important things. That comes right down to an electronic medications management system with a patient identification system. Installing a robot on its own will not deliver the benefits and the opportunities that are available. It's a very quite complex system. Interactive logistics, we saw that at St Olave's and Orbis, where AGVs, pneumatic tube systems and robots interacted and worked together. ICT systems were a key feature at those hospitals, as well as interactive PES, and vacuum waste was seen in Norway at St Olave's and Akershus, and often think that they were installed there probably because a very wealthy country has the money to spend on that type of system. This image here, it's about to lead into a video, so if I just talk to you first about it. This is in the main public area of a ward in St Olave's. The way that the hospital is structured is built in a number of pavilions or buildings which are connected through a series of underground corridors where the AGVs travel from building to building. They penetrate up into the building through the public lifts, and they pop out into the main area of the wards to pick up or drop off carts. When we often talk about wanting to separate non-clinical functions from clinical functions. This was just an interesting situation to see that it can work if you've got a circulating corridor below, and as I say, the AGVs only come into within 20 metres inside the ward. So the AGV is actually negotiating the trolley. It'll pick it up. Once it's picked it up, it'll go back towards the elevator, call the elevator, ask people to get out, and then it'll actually go in and disappear. The whole system is automated. The system knows that this trolley is sitting here waiting for collection. Without any human intervention, the system will program the AGV to come and pick up the trolley and take it away. Other facilities such as Arcasus and Orbis at Sittard had very separate circulation pathways for AGVs and back of house services, and they never come into contact with the public at all. So this is the main entry to the ward we're standing in just here now. A set of stairs coming up, or the public lifts that this is about to go into. One of the interesting things after seeing all these facilities is that, when we get into concept design planning stage, we always think about, okay, let's separate the public and the patient and back of house pathways and get those sorted out as we're laying out the facility. I'll just let this go in before I finish talking. If you notice, you'll see that automatically the light comes on for the inside the lift to tell it what floor to go to. You can see it. So we often focus on, in a concept design stage, working out public and patient back of house circulation pathways. And I think one of the key important things after doing this tour and actually working on a couple of projects where we've either put AGVs into after we've briefed the project, or even putting them in, we're going to put them in concept design phases. After that experience and looking overseas, I think the first question when we get into planning is, do we want this facility enabled for AGVs? Because I think it is the first pathway, circulation pathway we have to sort out. So you saw the AGV come into the ward environment at St Olave's. Here at Arcasus, it came into the ward, but in a non-public area. The trolley is just sitting in a collection point. And if you walk around places like Royal North Shore, you'll see in Sydney, you'll see these types of spaces where trolleys reside, and the communicating system, the operating system knows that trolley's sitting in that space, so you can pick it up or drop it if required. Okay. One of the things we came to the conclusion about was the barriers to adoption for technology, and it usually came down to limited capital funding or a business case that just didn't stack up for it. At the time, for some facilities, the technology was too immature, and or facilities did have the integrated systems available, and it was just the next step for them, particularly for Orbis at Sittard, who used SAP software for every application they ran in their facility. Automated pharmacy solutions are in use at Orbis at Arcasus, as well as to the UK facilities. Centralised robot systems dispensing to a patient level, operates within a totally integrated EMR or EHR environment, electronic health record. Ward areas only hold 24 hours worth of stock of prescribed medications. They will then hold one-offs, that sort of thing as well, the stock of those. Stock's issued on a daily basis, and the robot dispenses overnight. It's all automated and sent up to the ward. Electronic prescribing is key to the operational efficiency of the robots. They require a small footprint, less than 100 square metres, with a high degree of accuracy, and the systems are scalable and can be provided central or decentralised dispensing service. Some benefits of automated pharmacy solutions: reduced stock holdings across the entire facility, and the places that we spoke to, reduction in expenditures, particularly around waste, loss and theft. And interesting, in Australia, Princess Alexandra Hospital in Brisbane have a robot or automated pharmacy solution operation, and this is one of the key things that they found after getting the system operational. It relieves staff from manual dispensing tasks, reduces their medication errors and waiting times for discharge medications and outpatient medications. Transactional data was available at places like Orbis down to a drug level, probably a little bit too much information, but they use that information to influence prescribing practices of their medical clinicians. So they would look at a cohort of doctors and say, okay, the variation between endocrinologists around a group of patients is this to this, and they would bring them together with the data and start having discussions about we actually need to become more efficient, and can we become more efficient, and to understand the differences, can they actually start to use this information to allow clinicians to guide process and practice improvement. And they have the potential to redirect pharmacists back to the clinical environment. In the Australian context, Princess Alexandra, as I mentioned, have got an automated pharmacy solution going. Other facilities such as New Kids in Perth and NRA and Adelaide are looking at it. For us in Australia, there is issues around e-prescribing capabilities and interfacing to corporate systems, and one of the common problems is that our drugs are not yet, drug packages as yet are not barcoded. This is a robotic arm in use at Akershus in Norway. It is a robot arm taken directly out of the manufacturing environment. The hospital worked with the university engineering department to develop this. It came about as a result of staff having to undo pneumatic tubes to get blood specimens out of them. There was this repetitive strain injury that was occurring to staff. So for the cost of €250,000, this robotic arm was developed and eliminated the human intervention required to open the tube. And what you'll see, there are two videos. The first one is where the specimen does not drop properly out of the canister, and the robot knows, so it actually puts the canister over to the side here so that staff on inside pathology know there's an issue. And the second video is where the specimen is dropped out of the canister appropriately, and then the canister is put back into the system. So here the canister arrives down from the PTS, picks it up, it's opening the top of the canister. It just opened the bottom of the canister, but you can't see it. You can see here the specimen doesn't drop out, it's actually caught there. The robotic arm knows, so it actually puts the canister over here to the side. And you'll see the specimen dropped on the ground. The next video shows you how it does work when the canister, when the specimen drops out properly. So it's actually opening the top of the canister, it's opening the bottom of the canister, and then it pushes the specimen out. And the canister is put back into the circulation. Another piece of technology that we see in health, it was a solution that was developed with an engineering department at a local university to overcome a problem with repetitive strain injury. Yep, okay. Size and configuration, I'll skip over this. Let's see. Facility form and configuration, almost all hospitals adopted shared bookable space. The central atriums were a big feature, and the central atrium provided a good amenity. And most people thought this was a cultural, thing around, less light during the day in these environments. St Olave's adopted an institute model, which resulted in these 5 buildings spread out across the campus. connected by underground corridors. Next slide, future flexibility and sustainability are a key focus in the Netherlands, particularly with Deventer. They were using geothermal technology to heat and cool water, which was very smart. Sustainability was a key focus. Again, here's the geothermal heating seen at several sites. Deventer was the one that stood out. Procurement models were evident in the UK around PFI models. Netherlands, capital funding tends to be provided by the state, or in actual fact it's procured by the health facility itself. And in Norway, it's directly funded by the government. And in each three environments, you can notice that we felt there was a different approach to how it was funded, and that came through in the building outcome. Facility guidelines should be guidelines at that. From the study tour, people raised some questions about PFI and how this process does or can affect the design outcomes. There was a stark difference between the outcomes of these facilities and what we're seeing over in Europe. And I think I might just skip through these, Dario. The next tour is happening in a couple of weeks' time, and stay tuned for that. Thank you.